Hello, my name is Jenna, and I am going to go through classroom economy really quick. These are going to be like the most basic information. I'll be going over this in more detail for Wednesday tomorrow, and I wanted to share this information with you ahead of time so that you could go ahead and take a look at it. So first, this is going to be the link that will take you. Nell had that in her email if you get those. And this is the link that I saw a million years ago that made classroom economy work for me. There are going to be some things we're going to talk about, as you can see here. Actually, there is no what else. I deleted that. So really quick talking about, and I'll talk about this tomorrow in depth, but incentive versus bribery, it's all about that intention. You have to think about this intrinsic value is what we want them to have. We want them to have intrinsic motivation, just like we should have that for ourselves. And sometimes that requires some building, some practice. So you want to think about intrinsic value as like a muscle, a habit, a practice, something that people learn and that perfect over time. And then that way you can understand that the physical incentives, or for me, I didn't use physical incentives. It was things like you could not wear your shoes for a day if you paid $20 for the privilege. But think of that outside stuff as the scaffolding used to build the ability for them to self-build intrinsic motivation. So then going back to the idea of what are the extrinsic values that you're going to be giving, I always went with super low cost. We spend enough of our money. So this was an area where I was able to kind of trim some funds that I was spending, because I was spending like hundreds of dollars on stuff. And it just didn't work out for me. So I went to a cost-free, privilege-based system, and that was one of the best things because it saved me a lot of money, but the privileges were more important to the students than the stuff. And so once that switched in our classroom, that those privileges, they were more valuable than the cool eraser. Not that you shouldn't have a student store with cool erasers, but in my classroom, that's what I found to be the best. Things like being able to take off your shoes. I had a cushy chair that students could buy. You could sit in the teacher chair for a lesson, things like that. Right here, you're going to see that there are an entire list of Google search results to give you the idea. So one of the things you need to ask yourself is your currency going to be physical or digital? Physical means that you can have different strips of paper that have different colors, that have different denominations, and it runs just like a classroom. Mr. Cook, just an amazing teacher that came out of Canocti, it still is in Canocti. He did actual physical cash, and he put his face on it, and it was just silly and adorable, and the kids loved it. I went with Beth Newingham's credit and debit log. You get one of these top spiral notebooks, and you can actually print this out from her right here. And right here, you'll see these are $1, $5, $10. So that's really good for like second grade, third grade, maybe even, $1, $5 only, or $1, $2, $3, $4. That's what's nice is you can modify these. When I went to fourth grade and fifth grade, you'll see that these balances have 25 cents and 50 cents. And that's because I made these 50 cents and 25 cents, these denominations that they could earn, because they had to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide with decimals. So you can keep track of it this way. One of the things that Beth Newingham talks about is leaving the credit and debit log on the desk the whole day. And as students are on task, giving them a credit. So you can either do it physical with cash or with some kind of log, or you could do it digital. This is actually a copy of a digital bank that I had with the students, because I have a whole system where they go from the cash to the bank. So whatever they earn for that week goes into a digital bank. That way I don't have to print a bunch of currency, and that way I don't have to keep track of a bunch of stuff. So the tracking, though, is really valuable, especially if students are involved in it. It helps them with their counting, tally marks, and I'm sure you could think of other math skills or other even skills that students can learn when they're tracking how much they're earning, especially if you connect it to a behavior. When I had a behavior chart in the classroom, we all started on green, and you could move up or you can move down. But one of the privileges of moving up was you got, or one of the not privileges, but one of the prizes of moving up was that you could have, you earned $5 that day. So when it's connected to that kind of behavior, then it becomes this self-reflection piece too, that all you need to activate that is to acknowledge it and have that conversation. So you need to be really clear about how to earn and how to earn credits and how to earn debits. There are points in my classroom. I think about class points. I never take class points away, but I do apply debits, especially in taxes when they leave a mess, or it's mostly mess related. Let's be real. So how they can earn credits, you can have this conversation with them. What kind of things should people get rewarded for doing in our classroom? And then debits that talk about, like, the tax, the pieces of it, like why are there debits? Why aren't you just getting credits? Why are there debits? And then when you have those debits and they're adding them up, you're actually kind of like cementing the idea of what negative numbers are, in my opinion. But really be clear about that. When I was teaching upper grade, I could say to a student, what's going on right now. They'd be able to tell me the behavior that they shouldn't be doing. And then I would ask them, what is the consequence? And they would put their own mark for their own debit. So payday works completely different in every classroom. In my classroom, I adopted her banking idea. And so there was a payday on Friday, and I had two bankers, one at the computer and one at one of those trifold cardboardy things that I'd painted. And what would happen is a student would show up with their credit and debit log that they'd been tallying throughout the week, and they come up with the totals. If you let me take you back here. Right here, you see that these are 7. So the student would do the math, write the subtotal, the sum in the box, circle it, and then write the totals here and here and the final total here. And the banker would look at the weekly total and check the math and make sure that this math was done correctly. If that would happen, then a student, here's a closer, if that happened, then the student would turn in their credit and debit log to the banker after they've decided that, and the banker would stamp it and say, yes, this is accurate, then give the students this exact paycheck. It was a paper paycheck, and students had to write their name, they had to write out the amount, and they had to write out the number in Word form, which is a standard. So that is how they would participate with the bank. Then if that math was correct, they would, and their paycheck was written, I would sign their paycheck, so their math was being checked once by the banker, once by me, and then the final banker was the student at the Excel page who would be typing in the deposit and giving the student their new balance, which they could keep track of on the back. Shopping was very much for me all about privileges, writing things on index cards like you cannot wear your shoes for a math lesson, or you choose the lesson, although they're choosing between 2 file folders and they're both beneficial. So student store doesn't have to be anything physical. It can be, of course, whatever works for you. And finally, when you're dealing with something that's this widespread across your classroom, it's a behavior incentive. It's a behavior tracker. It's a data tracker for you. This, by looking at my bank, you could see who were the students, although it does say purchase right there, so it wouldn't be exactly fair to do that without seeing, but let's pretend that there's no purchases and this is just the balance. You can see by looking here, who's earning the most and why. And from there, I was able to build behavior contracts with students to improve their earning. Money and numbers are so solid, and it's a real concrete way to show students their improvement over a long period of time. So this was just the quick classroom economy overview. I will see you tomorrow at Workshop Wednesday, and take care of yourselves.